there was no major trust issues. There was a lot of support. There was a lot of mutual respect between Kublai Khan and Marco Polo. The Polos returned home and faced a lot of challenges. Marco suggests they went by sea when they departed from the China coast, and there were hundreds of sailors when they set up. There was some notary documents that they described an attempt by the Venetian government to recover Polo's losses to the Persians, but it was not successful. He was kind of really conned out of a lot of his money by the Persians at the time. Polo is known for kind of changing the course of world history. This is a pretty big deal because Marco's adventures improved relations between the West and the East. The West and the East gained more knowledge of what was going on in the West and vice versa. The West was like, wait a minute. When I say the West, I mean like Europe and Italy and England and other places like that. Like, what is going on in the East? This is some really crazy stuff. Now that we know about that. So. Anyway, so yeah, Yuan dynasty really, really rise in power in the Mongol Empire here. Eventually, that empire did fall out of power, but it had an incredibly strong run, and Kublai Khan was able to do quite a lot of good things for the people there. Now we turn to China's Ming dynasty in Asia, obviously East and Southeast Asia. So the middle of the 14th century, the Yuan dynasty was run by the Mongols, was in decline. Like all Chinese dynasties, was kind of coming to an end, and there was evidence the rulers had lost the mandate of heaven. The government was corrupt. It spent too much money on wars, and they could not collect enough taxes from the population to provide them with the services to keep them content. So many Chinese leaders grew tired of being ruled by the foreign Mongols. They wanted to turn to a China run by Chinese, kind of like make China great again almost. In 1368, a rebel leader by the name of Zhu Yongzhang rebelled and formed the Ming dynasty. So that is how that turned out. And after defeating the Mongol rulers of the Yuan dynasty, Ming Emperor Hongwu started building new sections of the Great Wall. The Jinwei Imperial Secret Police served the emperors in the Ming dynasty in China was formed. It was founded by the Hongwu Emperor in 1368 to serve as his personal bodyguards, but then it kind of grew into a sketchy secret police organization. There was also a legal code in the time of the Emperor Hongwu that was quite great. It was one of the great achievements of his era. Emperor Hongwu took great care of the whole project, and in instruction to the ministers, told them the code of law should be quite easy to understand, so officials and inhabitants should not misinterpret those laws. The code of the Ming dynasty treated slaves better than the Tang dynasty. Under the Tang code, slaves were treated almost like domestic animals, but they gained a lot more respect at that time period, which is very nice. China was a very isolationist place when it came to trade. To keep influence of outsiders to a minimum, only the government was allowed to conduct foreign trade, and only through 3 coastal ports, Canton, Macau, and Ningbo were the name of the ports. In reality, though, trade flourished up and down the coast. Profit-minded merchants kind of smuggled in some silk, porcelain, and other valuable goods into the eager hands of European merchants, and they paid for them with silver, much of it from mines in the Americas. So that's a sign of what's coming up in this episode. Christian missionaries accompanied European leaders into China. They brought Christianity and the knowledge of European science and technology, such as the clock, which is interesting. China during the Ming dynasty was home to many different religions as well, including Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, even Christianity, which was promoted by missionaries from Europe as well. So there was a lot of important stuff coming in there from the Ming dynasty. A lot of new influences were spread and started. So now we turn to our next big point down the road of empires and explorers, our special episode. And what was forming now in Europe? Don't look now. National monarchies. Whoa, those were starting to form. So the thing was with them in Spain. We'll take a look at some of the characteristics. A nation-state is a country that has a strong central government, clear political boundaries, and is made up of people with a relatively common language and culture. So in the characteristics of the nation state, in Spain, they had a strong central government with a marriage between Ferdinand and Isabella. There was a police state, and there was some spying on neighbors, and the implementation of the Inquisition was pretty dark, forcing political, cultural, and religious unity, and an Inquisition enforced the unity in Catholicism. That helps the third characteristic, which was an empire made up of people with a common language and culture. Also, clear political boundaries meant merging of Castile and Aragon, Reconquista, which was the conquering of the Granada, and forcing the implementation of Christianity was another big thing as well. Was the clear? There's some boundaries in this. There's some political boundaries in this country as well. In Portugal, though, they got a little bit more focused on exploring, and they were one of the first to start this little exploring trend that really took hold of Europe. What happened was they motivated the Portuguese. The search for riches, the ocean was pretty much a big place for opportunity, and there was some mythology that promised some big riches in reward for exploration. And that's what all motivated the Portuguese to start exploring the ocean. They wanted to take over the spice trade. That was the big thing. Spices gave flavor to food and were also a symbol of status at a dinner table for a rich person. Spices were very valuable and really an opportunity. That was one of the things where they tried to make a very big stride in. Also, Christopher Columbus was one of the people who followed up in that mark. He did something no one really had ever done before by following the Atlantic winds. He thought they would carry him in record time to reach North America and then home again. But really, what they did was guide him to the Caribbean. But where he thought he was an island off the coast of China. So that's not entirely correct at all. It's not incorrect. It's actually not correct at all. Columbus, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. So one of the groups that had lost control over the spice trade as a result of the Portuguese voyages was the Arabs / Muslims / those people, and they were not happy about that at all. Not at all, in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah. But the tough thing was they couldn't really do too much about it in the very end. So it was a very sad situation for them. Anyway, so another big thing was Columbus. He got financed by Isabella and Ferdinand of Spain, and the voyage, the Pinta, the Nina, and the Santa Maria, those ships set off to the Americas. Is where they would eventually turn up, and there waiting for them, they would find the Aztecs. So they were one of the big empires, one of the first empires there. So the Aztec Empire was really quite an incredible place. It formed some of the Aztecs. Their environment there was they lived in a city. Tenochtitlan, a city surrounded by a moat 3 to 5 miles wide in some points. The economy was made up of tributes, including gold filling the coffers of the empire, really helping it out a lot with tributes like gifts, taxes, etc. The king there was Montezuma. In the military was a big part. They had really aggressive military conquests. And one of their main religions, they were guided to their home. One of the main things was their religion. Religion played a big part in it. They were guided to their home city actually by an ancient prophecy, and a major temple in Tenochtitlan was built for 2 major gods of the Aztec religion. And the Aztec priests actually conducted a major amount of human sacrifices never before seen in the history of man. The city actually, in the end, though, grew to be 5 times this size of London, which is pretty crazy. Then the Spanish arrived. Montezuma feared the Spanish because he in the prophecy that guided them to the city. I also mentioned the return of the ancient gods, and they would be white people pretty much, and that's what the Spanish were. So he was like, "Oh God, the gods are here." No pun intended. So he was very afraid of that. Marina was one of the people who helped Hernando Cortez, one of the first conquistadors who conquered this Aztec land. She was the mistress of Cortez and translated between Cortez and Indian dialects. Montezuma responded to the arrival of Cortez by sending gifts to appease who he thought were the big gods in the Aztec religion who had came back to the land. So he was really quite nervous. The Aztecs were very surprised by the incredible strength of their military technology and horses. They had horses, which was really quite new, and that was something that was kind of a common theme throughout the Spanish/European conquering of the Americas. Other tribes helped Cortez conquer the Aztecs because the Aztecs had been using them as human sacrifices. So that's not the best way to make friends. So when they come around, they did not get that much help. What Montezuma did show Cortez was the room full of gold that he had, and that was it. He wanted in. So eventually, he conquered Cortez. Cortez conquered the Aztecs, and things just kind of went downhill for them for there, as that whole Aztec situation definitely disintegrated quite quickly. So yeah, that's kind of the end of that for the Aztecs. But a little bit down the coast, the Incas were arising. That was one of the big things in the unit. You think of the Aztecs, you think of kind of the Incas as well. So the Incan Empire was quite a big situation. It was all in the villages of Peru. They were a very powerful situation. So in the olden days of the Lord Incas, all the villages of Peru had to be given rulers and representatives each year. The report they had to give reports to the Lord, the head honcho. The report was to tell the rulers of the men and women who had died, and all of them had been born, kind of like a census a little bit. This was necessary for levying taxes very well and efficiently. The reports were all made in truth without any fraud or deceit, which was very effective. In this way, the Incas and the governors knew which of the Indians were poor, the women who had been widowed, and whether they had been able to pay their taxes. So everything turned out to be pretty fair. One of the things they had a high priority, it was employment for everyone. Everyone had to work. There was food for all as well. And there was not that many free choice for individuals as well, which is not great. Even the Incas themselves did this to set an example. Everybody was to know that there should be nobody so rich that he might look down upon the poor. That was the big thing. It was not many free choice for individuals. Equal wealth was for all, and kind of distributed evenly, kind of like a communist-esque society, which is not very much popular today, but it was popular and kind of existent at that time with the Incas. So, yeah, Pizarro was one of the big Spanish conquistador of the Incas. There were paintings depicting him in a positive light. That's something you may see in your quiz as a form of a document, which is a little unfortunate as well there. So they was really just the point. The main thing you need to know is there's a lot of really tough to take brutality there at the scene of that situation. So really a lot of tough stuff to really deal with for the Incas, as they were eventually conquered by Pizarro. Speaking of conquering, let's delve further into that, shall we? That was not one of the best things in the history of the world, but Spain was very active in it. They made some 4 new colonies: New Spain, New Granada, Peru, and Rio de la Plata. And they had a model kind of like this. The Spanish king was at the top. He created a power structure to help himself rule over all the colonies. The viceroys really ruled at the ground level. Although the Spanish king, they were kind of like the servants of the Spanish king, and they were in charge at the ground level, the viceroys in these colonies. But the people in the colonies really got a big blow because they were conquered, and it really was not fun for them. Really not at all. So, the cost of colonization was really quite big, and there was one of the main things that happened was there was a large population of Native Americans present, which had and the beginning of organized slave trade for profit. Many moral sacrifices had to be made, as well as the meter system. which was formed, this is one of those most sacrifices, that forced labor for low wages and poor conditions. The class of laborers, or the peons, were mistreated. They were paid low wages and high taxes and owed significant sums to landlords and